Imagine being the CEO of a luxury brand, and then being denied service in your own boutique. That's exactly what happened to Ava Carter. But what she did next, it changed everything. Watch how, in just 10 minutes, she turned disrespect into a powerful lesson that no one in that store will ever forget. The morning sunlight spilled across the boutique's glossy windows, casting elegant shadows over displays of luxury handbags and hand-stitched couture. It was a quiet Tuesday. The type of day when the store wasn't swarmed with influencers or stylists, just the occasional walk-in who knew quality when they saw it. The front door opened with a gentle chime. In walked a black woman in her late 30s. No flashy jewelry, no designer labels screaming for attention, just a pair of well-worn jeans, crisp white sneakers, and a plain black tee that clung to her like it had purpose. Her hair was styled in a soft twist out, and her walk was confident, unrushed, deliberate. She didn't need to look wealthy. She was wealth. But behind the counter, the store manager, a woman in her early 40s with a stiff bun and an even stiffer sense of who belonged, barely looked up from her clipboard. Her eyes flicked over the new customer with a mix of caution and judgment. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice holding that high-pitched strain people use when they assume someone's lost. The woman smiled politely and stepped further in. "Just browsing," she said, her voice low and controlled. She moved with the kind of ease that suggested familiarity with the space, an energy the manager misread as entitlement. Already, the tension was in the air, invisible but unmistakable. Other shoppers, two white women in flowing designer scarves, were given warm greetings and personalized suggestions. But this woman? She was being watched like a potential liability, like a stranger, like a problem. She wandered toward a central display showcasing an exclusive, handcrafted leather tote, the store's current signature piece. She picked it up gently, examining the stitching, the finish, the subtle embossing of the brand's initials. The manager stiffened. She stepped out from behind the counter and approached, her heels clicking like a warning. "Just so you know, that item is priced at $2,450, she said pointedly, as if reading a script written in bias. "We don't allow food or drinks near this display." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Good to know," she replied coolly, still holding the bag with reverence. She wasn't here for drama. Not yet. But the storm was coming. And in less than 10 minutes, this boutique would never be the same again. The woman gently placed the luxury tote back onto its pedestal like she was setting down a piece of herself. Her eyes didn't just scan the merchandise, she understood it. Every stitch, every imported fabric, every curated accessory, she had personally approved them. But today, she wore no title, no badge. She was just a quiet observer walking through the very dream she built from scratch. The manager, however, saw none of that. Hovering a few feet away like a hawk circling prey, she tilted her head and offered a brittle smile. "That particular collection is made with Italian leather and hand-sewn by a Parisian atelier," she said, voice thick with condescension. "We don't usually get a lot of interest in it unless someone has a, more established budget." The woman turned slowly, her face unreadable. "It's beautiful work," she said simply. The manager crossed her arms. "Of course, we do have other options in the back. Discounted items. Still nice, just a little more approachable. Want me to show you?" Before she could answer, two other customers entered, tall, white, mid-30s, draped in obvious designer gear. The manager's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. "Hi, ladies. Welcome back," she chirped, her entire demeanor changing with the breeze. She all but sprinted to them, offering bottled water, perfume samples, and her undivided attention. The woman stood silently, watching it all. She'd seen this script play out too many times. The shift in tone. The subtle redirection. The unspoken message that said, "This space isn't really for you." But she didn't move. Instead, she walked over to a glass case and pointed to a limited edition clutch with a crystal clasp. The manager glanced over her shoulder and frowned. "That one's $3,200. But I really think we should stick to something a little more budget-conscious, just to be safe. She gave a little laugh, as if to soften the sting. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings at the register, would we? The air went cold. The woman didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned in just slightly and said, "You know, it's fascinating how price tags change based on who's reading them." The manager blinked, confused. The woman smiled, slow, measured, calm. This wasn't about a purse anymore. It was about principle. And she had just decided she'd seen enough. The boutique had returned to its usual rhythm, light jazz humming through the overhead speakers, the soft clinking of hangers, and the hush of designer shoes grazing marble tile. But for Ms. Carter, every second ticked like a countdown. The casual disrespect. The hollow smiles. The double standards, they were all piling up like receipts she was ready to cash in. She made her way to a rack near the fitting rooms, running her fingers across a silk dress she had personally approved last fall. The fabric was perfection, sourced from a black-owned textile mill she'd invested in herself. But to the store manager, watching from across the floor, none of that mattered. It wasn't just scrutiny anymore, it was surveillance. The manager moved in again, this time with forced concern etched across her face. "Ma'am," she said, in that sugar-coated tone that always hides a blade, "some of our regular clients are feeling a little uneasy." Ms. Carter turned slowly. "Uneasy?" "Yes," the manager said with a clipped nod. "They've expressed that your pacing and intense interest in our high-value items is, well, concerning." The two women she referenced, still sipping sparkling water and flipping through scarves, hadn't looked over once. Ms. Carter followed the manager's gaze, then looked back. "No one said a word to you," she replied calmly. The manager's lips curled into a fake smile. "Well, I'm saying it. And as the store manager, I'm responsible for ensuring everyone feels comfortable and safe." Ms. Carter raised an eyebrow. "You're implying I'm a threat?" "I'm simply asking you to be mindful of how your presence is coming across," the manager snapped, the mask slipping for a moment. There it was. The quiet aggression. The coded language. The careful wording that covered bigotry with a branded bow. "Maybe you'd feel more at ease browsing online," the manager added, gesturing subtly toward the exit. That was it. Ms. Carter straightened her back, her voice as smooth as velvet dipped in steel. "I've given you every chance to act with dignity. But you've made it clear, dignity isn't something you extend freely." The manager's expression faltered. Before she could reply, a buzzer buzzed softly behind them. Security had just walked in. The woman smiled. The show was just beginning. The boutique security buzzer let out a low chime, barely audible over the soft jazz humming through the ceiling speakers. But it cut through the tension like a knife. The manager exhaled with subtle satisfaction. Reinforcements had arrived. She turned toward the door, already rehearsing her version of events. Disruptive customer. Refused to leave. Made other clients feel unsafe. It was a script she had used before, polished, coded, legally vague. The door opened, and in stepped Marcus, the store's head of security. A broad-shouldered man in a crisp navy uniform, eyes alert and professional. He walked with intention, until he saw her. He stopped mid-step. "Ms. Carter," he said, blinking as if trying to make sure he wasn't seeing things. The manager's rehearsed smile faded into confusion. "You know her." Marcus didn't answer right away. He turned fully to face the woman standing calmly by the glass counter, her arms folded loosely, expression serene but unreadable. "I absolutely do," he said at last, his voice laced with respect. "That's Ms. Ava Carter, CEO, founder, the woman who signs my checks." The manager paled instantly. "Wait, what?" A slow, knowing smile touched Ava Carter's lips. "Yes," she said, stepping forward with poise. "This store, this brand, every thread, every color palette, every single display, is mine." The room shifted. One of the scarf-sipping clients gasped quietly. An associate in the corner nearly dropped a stack of blouses. The manager opened her mouth, scrambling for words that wouldn't come. I didn't recognize you. You weren't trying to, Ava interrupted, her voice smooth but firm. You weren't looking for a customer. You were looking for someone who fit your narrow idea of who belongs. Marcus stood silently at her side, arms folded now, not in aggression, but solidarity. Had Marcus not walked in, Ava continued, you would have escorted me out of my own store, because I wasn't wearing a designer logo or didn't have the right look. The manager stammered. I was just doing my job. No, Ava said, locking eyes with her. You were doing your version of it. One that leaves no room for people like me unless I'm in heels and pearls. A hush fell over the room. But Ava wasn't done. Because now, she was about to take control, not just as the CEO, but as the woman everyone had just underestimated. The air inside the boutique was still, almost sacred, like the moment before a storm breaks. You could feel it in the silence. In the stiffness of the store manager's shoulders. In the sudden hush of customers pretending not to stare while clutching $800 scarves they no longer wanted. Ava Carter stood at the center of it all. Not as a shopper. Not even as a CEO, not yet. But as a black woman, powerful, poised, and tired of watching her presence be treated like a problem. I didn't know who you were, the manager blurted out, her voice cracking under the weight of embarrassment. If I had known. Ava cut her off with a look so sharp it could slice through glass. If you had known, what? You would have pretended to respect me. No. I mean, you just didn't look like. Like what? Ava's tone didn't rise, but it didn't need to. Every syllable landed like thunder. The manager floundered. Like someone who owns a luxury brand. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Marcus, the security guard, winced and took a subtle step back, as if giving Ava space to deliver the final blow. She stepped forward slowly, her heels clicking with quiet authority. Let me tell you what I do look like, Ava said. I look like someone who studied every competitor in this industry for 10 years. Who built this brand with her bare hands and a dream that started in a 400-square-foot apartment. I look like someone who handpicked this exact location, designed this floor layout, and signed your paycheck. The manager's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Ava tilted her head, eyes narrowing. You might want to rethink that tone, she said calmly. Not just for today, for every day you walk into a space and assume someone's worth based on their outfit, their skin, their silence. I didn't mean to offend. But you did. And if I had been anyone else, you'd be celebrating right now. Patting yourself on the back for keeping the store exclusive. She made air quotes with her fingers. A pause. Then Ava smiled slightly, not out of joy, but justice. And since you like exclusivity so much, maybe it's time to exclude you from this brand entirely. The color drained from the manager's face. She had no idea. Ms. Carter was just getting started. The boutique's atmosphere had shifted completely. Whispers drifted through the aisles, the murmur of shoppers who suddenly realized they were witnessing more than a shopping trip, they were watching a reckoning unfold. Ava Carter's phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. A simple message, on our way. Within minutes, the sleek black sedan pulled up outside the boutique's polished glass doors. Out stepped 2 women and a man, dressed sharply in tailored suits, exuding the calm authority of people who knew exactly how to handle crises, and turn them into statements. Her executive assistant, Maya, strode in first, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp and ready. Behind her came David, the brand's top legal counsel, calm and composed. Finally, Jasmine, the director of operations, joined the group, already scanning the boutique for damage control. Ava smiled, nodding to each of them. She moved toward the checkout counter, now transformed into her command center, and pulled out her laptop. Her fingers tapped swiftly, pulling up the manager's personnel file, customer complaints, and previous incident reports. We have some housekeeping to do, Ava said softly, eyes still locked on the screen. The manager, who had been hovering nervously near the back, noticed the sudden shift in power and took a hesitant step back. A few employees exchanged uncertain glances. The customers who had once been wary now watched with quiet anticipation. Maya approached the manager, clipboard raised. "We're reviewing your conduct and all recent customer interactions," she said, her tone polite but unyielding. "Please cooperate." David stood beside Ava, pulling up policy documents on his tablet. "This is a clear violation of company values, discrimination and failure to uphold the brand's commitment to inclusivity." Jasmine moved toward the staff, quietly briefing them on maintaining professional standards while the situation was addressed. Ava leaned back slightly, eyes sweeping the boutique. This was more than a personal affront, it was a test of everything she had built. Her brand wasn't just about luxury handbags or designer shoes, it was a promise: luxury without judgment, inclusion without compromise. And today, she was making sure every single person in this store understood exactly what that meant. Because, in her world, respect wasn't optional, it was non-negotiable. The boutique's atmosphere grew thick with tension as the team took charge, the manager shrinking into a corner, realizing the magnitude of the situation unfolding around her. She wasn't used to losing control, especially not in a store she'd run for years. But this was different. This was Ava Carter's world now. The manager straightened her shoulders and fixed Ava with a cold, steely glare. "You may be the CEO," she hissed, her voice low but sharp, "but don't forget, you still need people like me to run your day-to-day operations." Ava raised an eyebrow, her calm facade momentarily flickering with amusement. "People like you," she repeated slowly, "who weaponize ignorance and prejudice under the guise of customer service? No thanks. Your time here is over." The manager stepped closer, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Be careful, Ava. Not everyone in your so-called team is on your side. Sometimes, the people closest to you are the ones who stab you in the back." Ava's expression hardened. She had heard the subtle threats before, the veiled warnings meant to intimidate, to undermine. But she was no stranger to battles. This fight was different, but the stakes were just as high. "Then maybe it's time to reconsider who I keep close," Ava said evenly. "Because I don't have room for those who judge before they listen, who build walls instead of bridges." The manager's jaw clenched, but before she could reply, Maya stepped forward, clipboard ready. "We've reviewed the incident thoroughly," Maya announced. "Effective immediately, you're relieved of your duties as store manager." A collective murmur rippled through the boutique staff. Some looked surprised, others relieved. The manager's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, words failing her. Ava watched her quietly. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. "Your behavior didn't just affect me," Ava said, voice steady. "It affected every customer, every employee, every person who walks through these doors expecting respect." The manager glanced at Marcus, the security guard, who stood nearby with an unreadable expression. Ava turned to the staff next. "Let this be a message: this brand will only thrive if we uplift each other, not tear each other down." As the dismissed manager gathered her things, the boutique breathed a collective sigh of relief. Because change was no longer coming, it had arrived. The boutique was humming with renewed energy as Ava Carter stood near the entrance, watching the last few customers settle into the calm after the storm. Her team had already begun reshaping the atmosphere, welcoming, inclusive, and respectful, exactly as she had always envisioned. Staff members exchanged quiet smiles, the kind born from relief and hope. The shadow that had lingered over the store, the unspoken barrier of bias, was lifting, replaced by something stronger, something real. Ava glanced at Marcus, the security guard, who gave her a nod that said, "We got your back." Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from her loyal customers, influencers, and business partners flooding her inbox with support, praise, and offers to help amplify her story. She smiled, the weight on her shoulders easing slightly. Because this wasn't just a victory for her, it was a declaration. The boutique wasn't just a luxury brand, it was a movement. A movement rooted in resilience, authenticity, and the power of standing up. As Ava stepped outside, the The late afternoon sun warmed her face. The city buzzed around her, life unfolding, stories being written, challenges met and overcome. She walked with a steady stride, head held high, heart steady. No longer just the CEO behind closed doors. Now, a living testament to change. To anyone who doubted her worth, she was the answer. To every young woman of color dreaming big, she was proof. And to the boutique? It was a new chapter, one where respect was the foundation, and excellence the standard. Behind her, the store's glass doors gleamed, reflecting the future she was building, not just for herself, but for everyone who would ever walk through those doors. Because sometimes, being denied entry is just the beginning of your greatest comeback. And Ava Carter? She wasn't just walking out of the boutique. She was walking into her legacy. Ava Carter didn't just reclaim her place, she rewrote the rules. Her story isn't just about luxury or business, it's a reminder that dignity and respect are the true markers of success. When they tried to shut her out, she opened the door to a new era. And that door, it's wide open for anyone bold enough to walk through it.